Welcome. In this video we're going to provide an introduction to square roots and an introduction to cube roots. At its simplest, the roots are the inverse operation or the exact opposite of applying an exponent in math. When we talk about a square root, we're talking about the inverse operation of the second power. You remember x raised to the second power we often called x squared. If we asked you to do the opposite of that, we would tell you to take the square root. We use this symbol, the radical, as you see here. This is called a radical, to tell you when we want you to take a square root. If there is no number on the index, that's this number on the foot, or if there's a 2 there, we know the radical is telling us to find the square root. If we see a 3 as the index, like we do in this picture, or if we do in this example here, that's asking us to find a cube root. And as we'll talk about later, the cube root is the inverse operation or the reverse of the third power. You remember calling y to the third power y cubed? The opposite of cubing a number is to take its cube root. When you go on to high school and to higher levels of math, you may even take higher roots. The fourth root may be symbolized by putting a 4 as the index. That would just be the inverse operation of the fourth power. But in 8th grade, all we need to focus on are square roots and cube roots. First, we're going to take a look at the square roots with this example down here. We know that the square root of 16 is equal to 4 because 4 squared would equal 16. I know that fact. 4 is the number that when I square it, it makes 16. So that is how I found the square root of 16. Pause the video and try to find the next two square roots on your own. Welcome back. This asks us to take the square root of 100. You won't usually see the 2 on the index. We usually don't have to write it at all, but if we see that it means square root, the square root of 100 is 10. I know that because 10 squared, 10 times 10 is the number that would make 100. The square root of 121, that's 11, because it turns out 11 times 11 would give us 121. The next thing we're going to look at is a cube root. That's symbolized when the radical has a 3 for the index, and that's the inverse operation of cubing a number of the third power. So we know that the cube root of 8, or the third root of 8, is equal to 2, and that's because of the fact that 2 raised to the third power, 2 times 2 times 2, would give us 8. Pause the video, find the next two examples. Welcome back. Hopefully you found that the cube root, or the third root of 27, is equal to 3, because if I did 3 times 3, that's 9, and 9 times the final 3 gives me 27. The cube root of 125, hopefully you found that's 5, because 5 raised to the third power, 5 times 5 is 25, 25 times 5 gives us 125.